Hey guys, it is Arika Misha. Thank you guys so much for clicking on today's video. And it is that time again. It is the end of the month. It is time for my spiritual and mental health check-in. It is time for that. The month of March. Where shall I begin? The month of March, I must say, let me just say the month of March. I just want to kind of touch on the month of March, leading into April. That's why I say the month of March kind of led, set the tempo for April. So last month, March, it was like God was preparing me, preparing me for things and forewarning me about things and saying, hey, watch this, watch that spiritually. God was giving me a lot of red flags. Hey, watch this, watch that, just talking to me about different things, in life, do's and don't do's, that's what the month of March was, leading into this month of April. April was filled with so many great things. April spiritually showed me how much I've grown, when God was leading me to do things, telling me to do things, how I was being so obedient. Okay, all right, yes, God, over here. Yep, no, God, over here. Yes, stop. Yes. And I just love it how far I've come spiritually, because like I said, the old me would, kind of slow to move and slow to be obedient. But I've learned through my life and through my spiritual walk with God, and especially the month of April, I have learned how to be more obedient and trust God's judgment, trust God's guidance, trust God's discernment, just more trusting. The thing about it is, the more you trust someone, the more you trust them. You get what I mean when I say that? The more you trust someone, the more you trust them. The more you allow them to lead you and guide you, and you trust their judgment. So spiritually, I've grown in that area, and I thank God for that, because that's important. We need that. Mentally, I've had, all kinds of stuff happening, all kinds of spiritual attacks and things coming against me, but God is for me. So who can be against me? Because I know God is for me, because I'm one of his children and I live for him truly. Perfect? No. But I live for God. I live for God, truly live for God. And I know that God has me protected through everything that I have been through. Through everything that I have been through, God has me protected. Spiritually growing like I always want to grow spiritually. God knows that's my goal every month, to grow spiritually every month. So spiritually, I am growing. Mentally, I'm staying strong, keeping that spirit strong to control that flesh. Keeping my mind strong, the spirit strong, so that my mind can stay strong. Allowing my mind to follow my spirit. Allowing my spirit to control my flesh. So, but the month of April was learning. I'm always learning, growing, seeing my imperfections, seeing that I'm not perfect. I saw a few of those this month. But I thank God. I thank God for showing me and guiding me, and God showing me how to be better in areas. So I thank God for that. I thank God for his guidance. Spiritually, I'm doing well. I thank God for that, because that's so important to me. Like I said, I am doing well. I'm growing. My faith is growing every day. So spiritually, I am doing well. Mentally, I had moments. I had a moment, where, I was like, God, I said, God, I don't know, God. I don't know if you can do that, God. I did. And God reminded me of all the impossibles he has done in my life. He reminded me, and that's what God does. God reminds us. He does. And that's what he did. God reminded me, of who he is. And sometimes we forget. We do. Even if it's for a split second. Because in that doubt, you said, God, I don't know if you can do that. God, I don't know if you can do this. God has to come in and remind us of who he is, the God of all, God, the God of the impossible. Yeah. So spiritually, I'm growing, doing well. I thank God for that. All glory goes to God on that. Mentally, I am doing well. I pray and ask God to protect my mind, protect my spirit, keep my mind. And that's another thing that God was talking to me about in the month of April. God was saying, protect your mind, because the enemy is after our minds. Protect our minds. Protect that. Protect. God said, protect that. God said, no, don't let that doubt come in. Don't let the enemy come in. Don't let that flesh come in. God said, you got to protect your mind. Protect your mind. When your mind starts wondering, God said, bring it back to me. God said, when your mind starts wondering, bring it back to my word. God says, when your mind starts wondering, your flesh starts wondering, God said, bring it under submission of the spirit. That's what God was talking to me about. All right, guys. This is Arika Misha. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget, go in the description box, click on that link to my second channel. God bless. Bye.